Well, hello and welcome back to the Rest of Saga Workshop, and this week, you've guessed it, we're looking again at the Land Rover, the 1976 Land Rover Series 3, and I'm going to explain to you just why I think this is the perfect starter classic for anyone looking to get into this hobby. Might have a bit of an uphill struggle in this one, but bear with me, fire everything in the comments and I'll get back to you. Let's get stuck in. So you want to get stuck into the classic car hobby. The world is your oyster. You're going to want to buy your own vehicle and you may or may not be interested in working on it yourself. These are all considerations. Budget, your own abilities, can you store it, what support there is locally. There's so much to think about and I'm going to try and work my way through this in the video. So first of all, budget. Everybody thinks classic cars have to be expensive, and I suppose, relatively speaking, yeah, it's not the cheapest hobby in the world, but as with most things in life, it's as expensive as you want to make it. This Land Rover, I was very fortunate. It was in a hedge, and I managed to pull it out and restore it, not necessarily to this standard, but initially I restored it on a completely student budget. I did all the work myself, well, everything that I could do, which was essentially most of it, and I'm completely self-taught, mostly off YouTube here, hence I continue to make videos and help other people if I can, but also out of the magazines. The magazines themselves are a dying breed, but Practical Classics is still there. Land Rover Owner and Land Rover World, which I read, they've both disappeared. There are lots more resources out there now, and the internet is absolutely awash with classic cars, especially young classic car owners who by their very nature are quite active in social media. So join the relevant Facebook groups, they'll be of so much help. So as I said, I got essentially given this because I pulled it out of the hedge and it wasn't working, it was burnt out, it was rusted, and I had to do all the work myself. Why do I think a Land Rover is good for this? Because they're so practical. Everything is nuts and bolts and screws. If you have a basic spanner set of AF and or metric, it's depending on what age of a vehicle you're going for, there's absolutely no reason you can't strip one of these down and take it apart. Honestly, a packet of or a set of sockets from Halfords, or of any of your cheap Amazon, eBay, any of those sellers, and you'll be more than fit to strip one of these down. And as long as you're careful, when you take it down, take it apart and take note of all your bits and bobs, you can get stuck into it and fix it yourself. But I would not advise buying an absolute rust bucket of a case if it's going to be sort of like a daily driver classic, because that is, unless you're a genius and you can work very fast, I don't know if that's a completely practical way of looking at it. I'll take you under the bonnet here and show you just how simple it is under there. So, absolute nuts and bolts in here. This is the diesel engine, the mighty 2.25 litre diesel engine. It's incredibly slow. I think maximum 55, 60 if you're really, really brave, and 65 down the hill with the wind behind you, but check your life insurance before you do that. This particular diesel lump has so few things that can go wrong with it. If it's running and it's not creating a lot of smoke or any horrific noises, it's probably okay. For instance, when you service this, you literally put oil in there, drain your oil out the bottom first, obviously, for anyone who's going to be smart. There's an oil filter down the side and your fuel filter, and that's it. That is the most basic service you can do. Water in here, that is your overflow, washer fluid, and there's not really anything else under here. That's an air filter, that gets oil changed in it as well. Honestly, it's all sitting looking at you, and nothing in here has anything different than nuts and bolts and screws. You love it. Or you name it, it's under here. Over here, brakes. No servos to mess about with, no vacuum lines coming off here, although the later series vehicles did. Everything can just be worked out by itself. And you'll be amazed how quickly you could strip one of these down and work on it, because everything's is in big parts, like a Meccano set or a big Lego set, whatever you fancy. Not very many people my age played with Meccano, but that's all right. So yeah, in terms of practicality and being able to work on it yourself, if you have screwdrivers, a socket set and a set of spanners, you'll be on your way to pretty much doing, I'd say, 90% of the jobs on one of these Land Rovers. Therefore, that keeps the cost down if you can do things yourself, and if you're prepared to learn and make mistakes, you'll get better as you go along. I started this 15 years ago. It didn't look like this whenever I finished with it the first time, but I've just worked at it. I spent a bit more money on it over time, and I've got there. So let's think, what else? Storage. Now this is an 88 inch. So this is the short wheelbase Land Rover. I'm very fortunate to have a double garage, but you could easily store this in a single garage if you wanted to, or on a street. It's not a massive vehicle and it's easily kept. They're not particularly heavy. I don't know if that is something you have to think about, maybe like a wooden floored shed or something like that. It looks heavy, but it's not much more than what a modern car would weigh, so you're not having to think of anything particularly special like that. What else? Parts prices. Classic cars break down. That's just life. As long as you maintain it, you will reduce that risk, but they will let you down someday. Parts prices in Land Rovers, compared to other classics, like the higher end stuff, which maybe you wouldn't be thinking about as a starter, are essentially quite cheap. Yes, they have got more expensive since I did this 15 years ago, but then so has everything. And with the general effect of Land Rovers getting fashionable and cool, like vintage Beetles and the like, parts are starting to go up. But they're really well supported, loads of suppliers, so therefore competition's good, and that keeps prices down. Let's have a look inside. So this is what you get. You might be starting out, maybe you do have a family, I don't know, not everybody has to start out in teenage life. I have 3 seats in here, so I can get myself and my children in front. There's more seats in the back for more children and or my other half. So they are practical. Really good if you want to start out in the classic hobby and take friends or family along with you. Just brilliant. Cost to insure this, £100 a year. I'm a male, yes, it's kept garage and I don't use it as the daily driver. I think I do about 1,500, 2,000 miles a year in this, but £100 a year. So that's going to keep costs down. Road tax is free because it's a historical vehicle and it doesn't need an MOT. I could MOT it if I wanted, but I know it's maintained to high standard. I check it over quite regularly myself, so there's not too much to worry about there for myself. Clubs. If you're starting out with a classic, you're going to want to join a club. The reason I say this is you will be amazed at how helpful club members are. You're a complete stranger to them, you've never met them, but your mutual bond over one of these vehicles, they will be more than happy to muck in and get started, helping you out and getting started in your classic journey. There are loads of Land Rover clubs, lots of local ones. There's one more recent startup, the Series 123 Club. There's a Northern Ireland branch, which is where I am, and there's branches all over the United Kingdom and even into Europe and beyond. So that's just one example, and they'll be more than happy to help you. There's the Northern Ireland Land Rover Club, and this is me just thinking local. So many books out there. If you buy a real niche classic like some rare Lancia or some funny Fiat that they only made in left-hand drive with a 1.6 litre boxer inverted rotary engine and a sequential something gearbox, you're going to struggle to get parts and support and prices. It's a British vehicle, they built loads of them, they're super popular and they're breaking loads of them as well because they inevitably do die. Honestly, go for something like this, of which there's plenty made. It's a starter classic. I think it's a good starter classic, up there with the Morris Minor, which I have one, and I restored I made plenty of videos of, and the MGB, which I did have, but unfortunately had to let go when the kids came along. But this stayed because I can still keep the kids out in this. They can go in the Morris Minor too, but there's not just as much space. And I have 3, and there's not isn't enough space for 3 kids in a Morris Minor, safely, these days. Modifications. If you have a starter classic, you're going to want to make it your own. I have added period mods, so I have freewheeling hubs, I have a winch, and the overdrive. These are desirable options. You might not want them from the get-go, or you might buy a Land Rover with them on. That's absolutely fine. I fitted them all myself or restored them all myself. It's brilliant. There's just so much scope for Land Rovers as a starter hobby. So moving to the last real points here. Why a Land Rover? Well, look at it. It's just so cool. That boxy shape, it's absolutely timeless. It just speaks of adventure. If you can think of a vehicle coming through the Sahara or the Amazon or up a muddy track in Wales with a sheep in the back and a cow strapped to the bonnet, something like that, it's a Land Rover. Yeah, it could be a Toyota Land Cruiser, but they're too reliable. That's boring. The Land Rover is just your archetypal classic off-roader, and they're just so cool. I love mine in this limestone. It's a little bit different. Green's great, blue's great, red's great, you name it. You look at the variety at these shows and through the Land Rover clubs, you will come to realise that the world is your oyster with these Land Rovers. So they're cheap enough to buy. Yeah, it might need a bit of work, but they're practical. Parts are cheap enough to buy, though they're practical. Tools, get them off eBay or Amazon, nice and cheap, practical. Insurance, MOT, road tax, all that, easy sorted. There's just so few downsides to the Land Rover as a classic. You can take it on an adventure. You can road trip to the south of France. It'll not take 10 minutes to get there, but you'll get there eventually and you'll have fun along the way. If you've stuck with me this far in the video, thanks very much. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. I reply to all my comments, as I said. I try and put different content out across all the different channels and interact as best I can. Give me a like and subscribe if you can. I'd really appreciate that. I probably pointed to the wrong side of the screen, but there you go, that's selfies for you. I make a video every week and a short every Tuesday as well. So thanks again, once again, for watching, and we'll see you again next week. Cheerio.